little intro and we'll jump into it.
Right.
All right, we've got Foster Gamble with us tonight. He and Kimberly made the amazing, groundbreaking Thrive documentary, What on Earth Will It Take? And that was back in 2011. And Darren and I have been, wanting to talk to him ever since then because that was quite an eye-opening documentary. And we just watched Thrive 2, This Is What It Takes. So we're here with Foster to talk about that and maybe his journey towards making this excellent sequel. So welcome to the show. Thanks.
Thank you. It's good to be on with you guys. I've been looking forward to this.
Awesome. Yeah, we've been looking forward to talking to you for years, too, and it's finally happened.
Yeah, I would have to say Thrive is up there with probably, one of those weird sort of reasons we started the show. Because I'm certain I seen Thrive before we were podcasting.
Yes, it was 20, like about a year or two before we started this. Yep.
That's good to hear because one of the reasons why I was eager to come on is that I love the way you guys talk with people like Nassim and Del Bigtree and Adam Apollo and these people and do really serious topics, but you do them in a light, humorous way that really makes it user-friendly.
Yeah, we try to do that. I mean, we try to be open-minded and sort of lighthearted about it because it is. I mean, if we didn't, it would be really depressing talking about a lot of this stuff.
It kind of lets people get their guard down a little bit, and then maybe something they weren't quite so because we hear all the time that it takes people a couple of tries. They listen and now they shut it off, but then they come back and I think if you're not having fun, what's the point?
Exactly. Now, Kimberly and I say the same thing. If we're talking, if we got movies called Thrive and we're not thriving, people are not going to be paying much attention to what we have to say.
Exactly. And like we were saying before we started recording, and I might as well say it now, I mean, the second one was amazing, and I really liked the way you guys distilled all that information, complex, some of it, and into something that we can all understand. I mean, my girlfriend was watching it. She said she was amazed. She was just stuck to it because I was like, just start watching it with me and we'll see how it goes. And she wanted to keep watching it because she's like, this is the stuff that you and Darren talk about all the time, but I'm understanding it now. So something about the way you guys presented it, it was distilled down that people can just really grasp what's happening on a bigger picture level.
Well, I'll look forward to passing that on to Kimberly because she's not only my beloved and creative partner, but she's also our producer, co-director, and co-writer. And she's the one, particularly on the visual effects, on the science part of it, that Nassim and Marshall and I and the visual effects people will be doing all this stuff, and then we bring it to her when we think we got it right. And sometimes she'll look at it and she'll say, well, guys, it's really beautiful, but I don't know what the heck you're talking about. So it's like, oh my God, I'm hearing the cash registers in my head. And it's like, we're back to the drawing board for a few more weeks. But when she says, okay, now I understand it, then I think that's one of the reasons why Thrive 1 was so popular with people is that she's really good at getting that translation to people who aren't geeking out on cosmic geometry all the time.
Exactly. So let's talk about that a little bit because I am interested in your I mean, you do address it a little bit in Thrive 2 about your journey from Thrive 1 to Thrive 2, and the good thing is you document a lot of that. But just from a personal level, were you guys? I mean, it was groundbreaking. I mean, it went all over the world. I mean, were you expecting that? What was the response like? Like, how did that feel for you guys? Because it must have been a little overwhelming.
It was such a pleasant shocker because I used to joke with Kimberly that as we were completing the movie, we had no idea how people would respond. We said, this might go in a time capsule. Yeah. We might broadcast this out in some other planet at some other time, might find it useful or something, but have no idea whether humanity is going to be interested in this or not. Because everybody told us, no, just pick one topic and go into depth on that. And he said, well, other people are doing that really well. Our job is to connect the dots and to do it with, beautiful visual effects. So we did, and we were just astounded that it went viral even before it premiered. The trailer came out, and we had the opening day, and there were over 2,000 house parties around the world the opening night. So people had invited their friends in to see this thing, and they hadn't even seen it themselves. All they'd seen was the trailer. So clearly we touched into a pulse, and in analyzing it after, we realized, first of all, that people really want to know what's going on because they're sensing that it's dangerous. And if they don't know, it's going to be a problem. And secondly, they want enough information that makes sense that they can then take action that actually has some hope of being effective. And then if it's conveyed in a beautiful way that has a reverence for nature, it just helps people to trust us, to get the deeper information, whether it's a unified field or the conspiracy for global domination. If they know that our transmission vehicle is beauty in what we say and what we show, that has also really helped. So the thing took off and has never stopped. It's still being seen by over 1 million people a month 9 years later.
Wow.
And so the two biggest, most pleasant surprises for us was, first of all, that we did 400 appearances, either online or in theaters or different conference venues and so forth. And everywhere we went, there was some sort of Thrive-inspired solutions group that had created itself and was taking action on a number of issues, either locally or globally through virtual media. And so what we did was we created a solutions hub on our website where these groups could connect with each other and share best practices and funding strategies and all this stuff. And now there's over 1,100 groups around the world. And we're about to bring out in the next few weeks our updated solutions hub that's going to be in 40 languages and will allow people who are taking on these issues to coordinate with other ones and not all having to be recreating the wheel all over the world. So that was number one super exciting surprise. And number two, we depict in Thrive 2 is that we were contacted by over 1,000 innovators from more than 90 countries around the world. And we just started, reading business plans and vetting technologies and so forth. And of course, not all of them are what they say they're going to be. In fact, over 90% of them aren't what they say they're going to be. But that still leaves a lot out of 1,000. So that's why when we started traveling around and seeing these cures for cancer and free energy devices and what the shamans were doing and what the ethical philosophers were doing, and then finally realizing, oh, wow, they're all talking the same language. They're all talking about techniques for understanding and accessing the geometry and resonance of the unified field. So that's when Kimberly and I finally just sat down and said, okay, we're seeing so much good news. We have to bite the bullet and make another feature film because we never thought we would do that again.
And when did you decide that?
That was almost exactly 1,000 days ago.
Wow.
We were down in Costa Rica leading a workshop, and we were sharing a lot of what we were finding with people, and they were coming up after a day's session and saying, my goodness, I finally feel proud to be human again, or I finally see some light at the end of the tunnel. And that's when we realized, okay, we're seeing such good news, and most people are seeing only such bad news that we really need to counterbalance that and get all these great insights out to the world.
So there can't be at 1 million people a month. I'd imagine most of our audience has seen, the first movie and will probably plan to see the second one. But can you kind of take us through, for the people who haven't, how that first Thrive sort of came to be? And I mean, you sort of talked about what a surprise the reception was, but what triggered that original Thrive movie? I mean, coming from, you didn't need to make the movie to make a living. Right. It was just sort of a pet project. I wouldn't mind hearing it.
Sure. Yeah. When I was in college, I became passionate about film and about filmmaking. I actually created a filmmaking department because they didn't have one where I was going to school. And that allowed me to spend a year doing a thesis, just making a bunch of films. And I thought, because people were becoming more aware of the environmental issues and anti-nuclear issues and so forth, I thought, maybe a decade or two and, humanity would be thriving. But boy, it was just getting worse and worse. And so I really dedicated myself to finding out what was in the way of humanity thriving. I had a lot of brilliant friends in college who were like electronics and engineering geeks. And I would sit around with them. And what they kept telling me was, listen, Foster, one of these days, we're going to have an instantaneous global information delivery system. And I trusted these guys enough to go, okay, well, that would be pretty cool. We really need one of those. I'll tell you what, I will spend my time, since I'm not an engineer, I'll spend my time researching content that would be worthy of a delivery system like that. And I thought it'd be maybe 10, 20 years or something like that. It was 42 years before I had a diagnosis of the problem that felt sufficiently accurate and solutions that felt commensurate to the problems we were facing. And fortunately, by that time I had met Kimberly. We actually met at a think tank and decided to do Thrive 1 together, and then fell in love making the film. We were already, work partners while we were making the film. So that thank God I didn't try to make this film before meeting her, because I had no idea of the depth that's needed of production and business management and direction and all that kind of stuff.
Wow, that's fantastic. I didn't realize you guys just met during the first one. That's great.
Love story.
I mean, the second one was really, really good. I mean, I was really, really pleased with it. I feel like this is the one that people can sit down with their family and friends, and especially now with everything that's going on. It really is the thing that people need to just sit down and watch the whole way through. I mean, I don't want to tell people what to do, but I mean, I was a little bit hesitant, because of all the things that have been happening the last while, and all the disappointments with whether it's like a movie sequel or this sequel or that, or just things that come out that just seem like they're propagandized. And you guys did a brilliant job of just not involving any of that stuff. Like, it was very, very well done, as far as, like, you talked about personal sovereignty, and you talked about politics without being political, and you talked about the environment without making it sound like, right in the middle, right where we need to be. We all want a clean environment, and we all want free energy and all, but you really took the polarization out of it. So I don't know how you did that, but I was just pleased the whole way through. And I maybe I'm jaded because of the last 4, 5, 10 years of propaganda, but it was great.
No, there's nothing that we would rather hear, and we worked really hard on exactly that. Not just to make it nice, but to actually find, what is the philosophical source? What's the approach that actually does transcend the political polarity? And, you hear about all the oneness, the new paradigm of oneness from the New Age and the consciousness movements, and that's great. It's really important. It's vital. But unless you actually unpack that so where you can apply it in practical things, it's not going to solve these problems. And that's why we spent the time and the money on the visual effects to lay out. We like to call it Thrive 2, starring the unified field.
Yeah.
Because the big breakthrough for us was, wow, all of these people who are being successful have a sufficient understanding of the unified field, whether it's the math, the physics, the geometry, or the music, that they are then applying those principles. Like with the free energy devices, they're all using the toroidal geometry. They have to get the right materials. They have to get the right frequencies of rotation of magnetic fields and all that type of stuff. When they get all those things right, all of a sudden the device becomes transcendent. Rather than, the old means of accessing energy by exploding stuff or fissioning stuff or breaking stuff apart. Instead, it's literally dancing with the universe. And when you get that dance right, the universe goes, all right, somebody gets it, and just starts pouring out electricity or pouring out healing energy or pouring out the insights that we need if we're expanding our consciousness, as long as we have created that still point, gone into resonance, and then don't try to violate the way the universe wants to work.
Do you think this is new information, or do you think this is something that was maybe lost or maybe suppressed?
I think all of that. I don't think it's new information. I think that My research has led me to believe that there are extraterrestrial species that have had this for, who knows, a million years. It could be, if they're traveling here from other solar systems, much less other galaxies, they not only understand this stuff, but they've survived long enough that I think that they must have transcended the political polarity enough not to blow themselves up with their technology. And I think that's where we are right now, is we're in that critical point. Bucky Fuller called it, we're in the race between utopia and oblivion. And it's not a done deal. We're actually, running toward that finish line right now. And our technologies outstrip our consciousness and our ability to resolve conflict and organize ourselves without this whole myth of authority. That I think there's still evidence. There's a lot of evidence in the crop circles. There's a lot of evidence from credible contactees, and there's evidence in the Great Pyramid. You go to the Great Pyramid. I don't know if you guys have been there.
Yeah.
And notice you got the Metatron on your wall. When you see those massive, hundreds of tons stone blocks that nothing today could lift, much less place underground, and there's just no way that they did that with technologies that were primitive. And so that's a lot of confirmation. It's one of the things that has interested me so much, along with Nassim and Adam Apollo and others that in ancient cultures, because the ancient cultures and the future civilizations represented by the extraterrestrial phenomenon, both are kind of bookending the realizations of these new technologies that are coming out now.
That's interesting, because that's probably the most interesting thing we noticed doing the show, is we kind of started it without a real topic. We left it kind of open. Our tagline from the beginning has been with whoever we deem interesting, often on the fringe. And what we noticed a few years in is that there seems to be this intersection point between all of it, the paranormal, the conspiracies, the spiritual,
ancient mysteries,
the healing, the ancient mysteries, the mega structures, the UFOs, and it all seems to be colliding on this central point. And Thrive 2 seemed to kind of bring that home for me in some ways, that you're noticing the same thing with energy and healing and medicine and that same sort of.
So let me ask you a question. With all the people that you've talked to and this pattern that you're noticing of how the overlap of these things, what do you think the common theme is from all the people you've talked to?
Consciousness, I think. I mean, it's
specifically trying to keep your consciousness in like a love-based space.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love has been the overwhelming
overarching answer to most problems.
Yeah. I think that's a beautiful and really profound answer. And my working definition of love, I talk a little bit about it in Thrive 2, but I'm not talking about romantic crush kind of love, but like, what is this great love, the I from Aikido, of merging with the energy of the universe? My working definition is the experience of alignment with the flow of the unified field. Because whether that's with your physical body, if you're aligned with your emotional flow, with the thoughts going through your mind, your relationships with other people, when you're in harmony with that, the experience is like, whoa, yeah, that's what everybody's looking for. And I think that's the experience of love that not only is there in common to human experience, but these devices, the medical devices and electrical devices in particular, that are tapping this field, I would describe them as love-based devices. Not just like they were made with love, but no, they're actually representing that experience of creating the still point and then going into harmonic resonance, non-violation with the energy of the field. And it turns out that such technologies are capable of everything we've dreamt of the healing, of access to electricity, of counter-gravity. So to me, that's super good news for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do like the way towards the end where you made the analogy or you kept showing that this decentralization and even our social practice of resonance or whatever, it really can mimic the unified field. And it was good to see those examples constantly pointed out.
Yeah, it not only can mimic it, in my opinion, it has to mimic it if we're going to survive as a species. That's why that's the main thing that I'm researching these days, and will be the rest of my life. I'll be in this conversation about the non-aggression principle, about the liberty perspective, because I think that as Stefan Molyneux says in the movie, we quote him saying, the main struggle for humanity is for a universal morality. And people don't stop to think about that. You know, we're really at risk because of immoral behavior and the giant weapons and so forth that and technologies that are amplifying that right now. But people don't stop to think, okay, well, where does our morality come from? You know, back in ancient times, there wasn't any. It was just like whoever had the biggest club, that was the source of the basis for decision making. And then the church came along and actually, to a great degree, has been the holder of morality through things like the Ten Commandments. Each of the major religions has their version of morality, but of course there were many different religions, and they each one had their different interpretation of what God's message was, and they ended up, you know, fighting with each other and creating the greatest mass murder in the history of humanity. So then comes along the state, you know, where now people, you either have your dictators or you've got your democracies or whatever, and so now morality is coming from the state. And hopefully you've got things like the Magna Carta and the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and so forth that are pretty good. I mean, those are major accomplishments for humanity. But the key, and we try to lay that out at the end of Thrive 2, is we're not there yet, because the state has been the only source of mass murder that has outstripped the church for sheer numbers of violence. So it's like, okay, well then where are we going to get our morality from? And Stefan Molyneux has written a book called Universally Preferable Behavior. And it is basically about a secular path to a universal morality. And that may sound very complicated and intellectual, and it is somewhat challenging to actually get there, but only because it's so simple that we miss it. You know, it's like fish don't talk about water. You know, we don't talk a lot about air unless there's something wrong with it. And in terms of morality, this non-aggression principle, which is basically says that no one is allowed to initiate force against anyone else except in true self-defense. Now, everybody says, well, of course, that's the golden rule. That's the most simple, obvious thing. I agree with that. And then 95% of human beings on the planet turn right around and vote for their next ruler who's going to steal people's money against their will and then go out and do horrible things with it. And that's the state that we're in. So the non-aggression principle is the only thing that Kimberly and I have found that every human being that we've ever talked to anywhere on earth agrees to, at least for themselves. We haven't met a person yet who wants to be violated against their will. Now, there are people who want to be whipped and spanked and all that stuff, but if they want to, then it's not against their will. You know, it's more like some kind of sport or hobby or something like that. And that's not what we're talking about. But given that every single human being seems to agree they don't want to be violated against their will, hey, maybe that's the basis for a universal morality that we've been missing. But the problem is, if you are rigorous about that, it leads very quickly and naturally to a stateless society where no one is ruling over anyone else. And people are so freaked out by that. It's probably the most radical notion on the planet right now, but also the simplest and the fairest, the most just notion. So that's the conversation that I want to be in the rest of my life.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, do you find it slipping out of control a little bit in the last few years? Just on a more of a, not government, like not state or religious violence, but I mean, I grew up realizing or thinking that, like you kind of mentioned when you were growing up, that everything's going to be fine from here on. The wars, everybody knows that wars are bad, and we're going to be moving into sort of more of a peaceful humanity. And it just hasn't really changed. And in some ways it's getting worse. I mean, the violence now, it seems like some people are okay with it, and I'm shocked that we're going back in some ways to that.
Well, that's why we spent so much time trying to figure out and then explain the global domination agenda.
Right.
Because what's going on in the world, with the continuing wars and poverty and starvation and pollution, much less the whole police state takeover of virtually every country in the world, it makes no sense at all unless you understand the global domination agenda. I mean, one of my main pet peeves these days is when I hear people saying, I just don't understand why they would do something like this. It's so incompetent. Why don't the government leaders do this or that or the other thing? Why don't the major corporations clean up the environment? It's like, no, wait, this is not incompetence. This is brilliance. This is shrewdness in a very dangerous scale. And once you have followed the money and gone down the rabbit hole far enough to see that, there actually is a relatively small group of people, but they've been at this for at least 200 years. And their goal all along has been like some poor imitation of a James Bond movie. It's total global domination, but that's exactly what they want. Psychopaths spend their waking moments trying to protect themselves from everything that they're afraid of. And it's never ending. So they have to build more and more wealth, more and more control, more and more domination over other people. And we've created political structures that actually promote the more psychopathic people who don't have the scruples against lying and cheating and stealing and murdering. And so they rise to the top of these structures in all the major countries. And so we end up with this international cabal of bankers, politicians, the corporatocracy, and so forth, who have come together literally in a conspiracy. They meet behind closed doors, and the evidence is ample for anybody who's willing to confront it. And they plan the completion of the New World Order, the one world government, whatever you want to call it. It's having total control over the world in the hands of those few people. And once you get that, then things like these locking down the entire world over of a medium level flu and destroying billions of people's lives and millions of businesses, and having people going around afraid of each other, and children can't go to school and people are afraid of each other with the whole mask thing and so forth. None of that makes any sense until you realize that, maybe if I look through the lens of global domination, this will make some sense. And then you start to follow the money and you realize, okay, it's exactly the same people doing exactly the same fake money stuff. And then, they've taken over the pharmaceuticals, they've taken over the media, they've taken over education, and it's all leading in the direction of trying to get over the goal line, to complete this one world government. And they've been failing in a lot of ways over the past few decades. They haven't gotten chips into us. They're getting exposed with their fiat money and fractional reserve and all that kind of stuff. So now they're desperate. So now they figured, okay, well, we'll use health, which is what most people are afraid of course. And we'll use that to make everybody so afraid that we'll get everything we've been looking for. We'll get mandatory vaccines, economic collapse. We'll get global martial law.
Tracking, yeah.
Cashless society. I mean, the list goes on. And now all of a sudden in the last 6 to 9 months, they're that close to getting all of it.
Yes, that's a great summary. Why do you think they've been failing over the last few decades? Is it the internet or is it?
Yeah, it's the internet and people like you who are willing to actually have media that's dedicated to discovering and disseminating truth rather than selling a new drug or propagandizing a political party or a nation state and so forth. So fortunately, the alternative truth media is growing so fast that there's people like Joe Rogan out there with daily live audiences, 10 times larger than any show on CNN. The mainstream media is not going to want you to know that, but it's people like yourselves who are drawing in people from all over the world to be in this quest for truth.
Yeah, that makes sense. the one thing that might be a game breaker is the free energy. Like I liked how you showed a list of all the suppression, not all of it, many of the suppressions that we all kind of know about. We talk about the T. Townsend Brown and all those other ones in the past decades, and then you actually go visit some people that have these like great stories of how they came about finding and funding these free energy devices. And then I thought, if they could, I mean, this all there, if they wanted to solve the supposed global warming or the pollution or the hunger and all that, they just have to, there's a reason why they're not doing it, because it's there for the taking to use it in that way. And they're obviously not. They're just suppressing it and taxing everybody to get to, it's a tax and control system. So maybe talk about some of that, like especially that one in Africa. I think that was a fantastic part of the movie.
It's an incredible adventure, and when you have the opportunity, which more and more people will be having now, to stand next to a device which is elegant in its construction, has no moving parts, is putting off no pollution, makes no noise, is plugged into nothing, and is putting out enough energy to run 300 homes in Africa, the toothpaste is out of the tube. and with this kid who, I don't think he went past 7th grade, but he's been in prayer all his life. He's a deeply spiritual person, and he got this profound guidance on how to do electronics, how to do radio frequencies, actually how to do schematics and so forth. He got all this in prayer. And then when he finally created a device specifically in order to put it in rural medical clinics in Africa, where he saw people dying for lack of refrigeration of medicines. He thought, okay, maybe I can figure something out that would solve that problem. So this is the motivation of this teenage kid who goes, okay, well, I'm getting some guidance here. So all this stuff comes through, and he spends a couple of years putting it all together, and it works. And the next thing that happens is the government throws him in jail to try to get his knowledge, and he won't give it to them. He says, listen, I'll share it with you. He said, Zimbabwe needs energy. We don't even have lights at night. We need the energy. But my message was from God through me for all God's children. So he said, I'll share it with you, but it needs to be shared with the world, because they wanted to basically corral it into their own government and their military. And he said, no, that's not what it's for. So literally they tortured him for days trying to get this out. And he said, kill me if you have to, but I'm not giving it to you for those purposes. So they finally let him out. And fortunately, there's a new regime in Zimbabwe now where they're supportive of what he's doing. Wow. He has become friends with the president there. He has installed one of the devices at the president's farm. And we've also made sure that intellectual property is secured in multiple countries now. So the toothpaste is out of the tube.
Wow, that's fantastic. And you guys were a part of that?
Oh yeah, I had seen a video about him on YouTube, and I've vetted hundreds of technologies, so I've got a pretty good nose for what's real and what's not. And when I watched it, I said, I think this guy is for real. It took me 2 months to find him. It was my friend Marshall Lefferts, who I think you've had on this program.
Yes, great. Yeah,
guy who tracked him down.
Wow.
Finally, contacted him through LinkedIn and Facebook, got an answer from him. And Kimberly and I had a Zoom call with him. And it was just this incredible conversation where he told us his story. And we told him about Thrive. He had gone and watched the movie. And he said, there's only a couple of people that I have really trusted, that I do trust in my life. But he said, I think I can trust you guys. If you come over here, I'll show you everything. So within 10 days, I was on a plane with a security team and a camera crew. We went over there and spent almost 3 weeks and went through the exciting and challenging adventures that we depict in Thrive 2. But the long and short of it is that, as he says, I don't know where this energy comes from, but the bottom line is it just works.
Yeah. Yeah.
So basically, I can just like throw this thing in my backyard and pipe in all my neighbors' houses to it and start charging them.
As soon as the devices are available, you know, that he was, I mean, we were creating a business for him in the United States. We were helping him with his business over there. We had major funders lined up who just needed to vet the technology, and then everything would be available. And literally he had one of the devices on packed up on pallets ready to send. We got him his visa, and then COVID hit. And so he quarantined in Zimbabwe ever since it started. So
maybe that's why.
All since Thrive 2 came out, he's got orders from all over the world for devices. So now it's just a matter of completing the business arrangements and getting him the funding that he needs to actually build these devices. And also to, you know, we've got a bunch of major players in the energy field that we know and trust, who know that they started with oil and gas and nuclear, and they turned that stuff off. Then they went to wind and solar and geothermal and realized, okay, that's a little better, but it's not very efficient. Doesn't really work. But they've been following Nassim's work and following my work for 20 years. And so they've known that this was coming. And so now they are lined up. They have the infrastructure for manufacturing, distribution, the whole thing. So we'll be licensing to major players all over the world to take it and do it for their countries, their continents.
Wow, that's great. That's fantastic.
Can we get a coupon code or something when they come up? What do you think the price point is on these things? Just like a ballpark.
It depends on the size. You know, some people want a half a megawatt because they want to run an entire community. Other people want a 50 kilowatt because they want to run, you know, some large houses or a factory or something like that. What most people want is like a 10 kilowatt or even a 5 kilowatt device that'll just, you know, they can put it in their garage and run their home. And so we're going to be bringing out a range of devices with different power levels. And I'm most enthusiastic myself about the small ones where people can just put them in their homes, where there'll be, you know, countless devices all over the world, and where nobody can centralize that power.
And does this pick up actual, you know, ether, whatever you want to call it, or is it radio waves? Like, is it manufactured technology that's already out there that it's picking up, like, or human made, or is it just picking up the natural?
That's one of the first things that my engineer Nils, who you saw in the movie, that the first thing we had him measure for was to make sure that there was no static energy or ambient radio frequencies or anything that it was running. And, you know, we were out in the middle of nowhere. So it was a very clean setting for vetting. But of course, there are radio frequencies throughout the cosmos, and, you know, not just human-made radio, but just those frequencies are everywhere. And what he seems to have been able to do, and I don't fully understand how it works myself yet. He has not shown me the entire intellectual property, but he's shown me parts of the device that other people haven't seen. And part of it he's allowed me to speak about. One of them is that there is a board in there. There's coils and there's electronic circuit boards and transformers and all this stuff. But the key, one of the key things is that there's a board with a bunch of copper bars in different lengths, and it looks like a xylophone. It looks like you could actually play the frequencies. And I said, well, is that a part of how you put together, you know, like a chord of frequencies? And he said, that's absolutely right. The same thing that this guy, Dr. Todd Ovakaitis, is that we also feature in the movie, who's found a way to activate our own dormant stem cells and just getting healing beyond practically anything I've seen. They're doing the same thing. They've each found a chord of frequencies that condition either biology or electronic technology in such a way that it taps the energy of the field, and these dormant stem cells come alive, and they'll just go around healing everything. And in his case, you need batteries in his device still, but the batteries never lose their charge.
Can't you hook them together and do like a 2-for-1 with the built-in? You got the power source with the built-in healthinator.
That's a great idea. I actually haven't heard that before. We are working with 3 of the Nassim and Dr. Todd, who I just mentioned, and Dr. Robert Young, who we also feature in the movie, who's been curing so many people of cancer. The three of them are working together now on some supplements that combine the physics and the medicine and the frequencies. But I haven't thought of putting the healing together with the actual energy technology. So keep going on that and let me know what you come up with, Darren.
Well, if I have it in my basement, it might as well be keeping me healthy at the same time, like preventative. And then, so this thing I can throw in my truck and take when I go camping too, it sounds like.
Depending on the size. Yeah. I mean, he's, the first one he ever built was, I think, a 1200 watt device, just on his workbench. And he's working on a miniature one now to power a cell phone. So it's very scalable up and down.
Wow.
And mind you, this is only one of 4 devices that I've seen that are creating this effect, and they all 4 have different approaches.
Yeah, the other one I remember was the Tesla style one with the tower, and people carrying around antennas or driving around with antennas, which could take the.
Yeah, that's not actually an energy generation device, but that's an energy transmission device.
Yeah.
If you have one of these like Maxwell's that generates it, you can either put it into a local grid or just literally put an antenna in the ground next to the device and then send it out through this patented technology that Zenic Power has down in Texas, and literally send it anywhere in the world.
Wow.
But there's another access device that we filmed it, we edited it, but it was premature to put it in the movie. I can't talk about the location yet, but it's just a system of coils that is predictably in a toroidal coils in a predictable geometry that you start with a battery and then you take the battery off and it focuses 20,000 volts in the core of this device. You have to actually have it under in liquid, in transformer oil, so that it doesn't spark. But it also has no moving parts, and they've got it up over 200 kilowatts already.
So that would probably run a cruise ship. That's just what we need.
It could, absolutely. And also the one down in Texas, the one of the ones they're working on is an antenna for a cruise ship, so that you can just be picking it up right out of the air.
That's perfect. We've been batting around the idea of buying a cruise ship since they're all being decommissioned and going out of business now, and just hitting the seas and getting out of here.
Yeah, absolutely. You can get out there beyond the national boundaries, and you can actually be a sovereign community.
That's it. Yeah, we'll have a fleet of boats, and we'll just be the love boat, cruising around, living the dream. So it's interesting to hear about the copper bars like the xylophone, because it makes me think of that device that Ed Leedskalnin used to have down at Coral Castle there. There was no plans for it, but the pictures, it kind of looked like that. As soon as you said that, I thought of that circular device with the copper he had.
Oh, absolutely. I think he's one of the guys who figured out frequencies. And I think, in the Egyptian pyramids, they have places underground there with these huge granite chambers that could only have been lifted down in through that tunnel. And they must have had something that not only would lift vast weights, but also probably turn it into some sort of plasma, because the surfaces are so smooth and they're put together with a precision that we don't even have right now. So I don't think they could have done that. They're certainly not with copper Stone Age tools. They must have been able to turn it into a plasma and then just put it together. Lift it, move it, put it together, and then let it harden again. And I think that Leedskalnin was one of the guys who knew how to do some of that.
Oh, that's interesting. And then finally, we got a sneak peek into Nassim's work, which was great.
Well, before you go there,
yeah.
What's interesting is Ed had that thing on the pole there too that had the little house-looking thing. There's he had a pole too. He had a pole in the ground, and he had that copper ring thing.
Right. Exactly. They're tapping it from space, but they're also tapping the earth energy.
Interesting.
Yeah, this was the first time that Nassim really allowed cameras into the resonator room there. And as you can see, I mean, it is such a beautiful thing. I mean, he and I were working together 20 years ago and we created the first one of those when we were working together. And I got to see its effects. You know, you were talking about having one of these devices together with a healing device in your basement. Nassim's resonator is a healing device. He mentions there's one phrase where he mentions in the movie that not only would it be generating energy, anti-gravity, but would also be keeping us healthy. And I personally did a bunch of tests with plants and cut flowers, with water that was put in the room with the very first resonator that we built. And plants would grow twice as fast, and cut flowers would literally, where one flower that cut off the same plant at the same time, one of them would be gone in 3 days and the other one would last 2 to 3 weeks.
Wow.
Some of the experiments I've seen my buddies do with, now that like pot's legal here, so everyone's growing weed like crazy. And it's like, I've got a couple pictures from people who would take one plant and they're like really nice to it and they say nice things to it. And they're giving them the same amount of water and everything, but one plant's getting, called names and stuff, and the other one's being nice to it. And after like 6 weeks, there's like an amazingly noticeable difference, like 3-4 times the growth on the plant that gets love.
Yeah, it's just like a marriage. Your health depends a lot on how you're treating yourself and how you're getting treated.
Yeah.
So maybe we could transition to the healing stuff a little bit, because that's a very important part of the movie too, especially with the medical paradigm that's happening right now and this big pharma push to vaccinate and to over this mild, like you said, a medium type flu. Talk about some of the healing stuff. I mean, that was one of my favorite parts of the movie as well.
Well, it's the same basic concept, and this is one of the reasons why we made the film, is we want to inspire young people, particularly all over the world, to just be aware of the existence and the power of the unified field, so that people can use their own brilliance. I mean, two of the inventors in Thrive that we feature in, well, one of them was in Thrive 2, one of them was the one that we edited but don't have in yet. They were both inspired to do their invention by seeing Thrive 1.
Wow.
See more of that all over the planet. And in terms of the healers, I remember sitting down with Dr. Todd Ovakaitis, because I've known him for 20 years. And when I first met him, he was in the process. He was doing experiments with what he calls phase conjugate lasers, where he was literally measuring the existence and the nature and the movement of the field. And I said, well, to what end? Why are you doing that? And he said, because I think if I found the right quarter frequencies, I could wake up these what's called V cells, our own dormant stem cells that are floating around in our blood by the trillions all the time. And literally about 15 years later, I get a call from him one day saying, hey, Foster, I did it. And I said, did what? And he said, remember that thing I told you about? He said, I figured that out. So I went down to San Diego where he lives, and I met with him, and he showed me what he was doing. And then we went out to lunch, and I said, okay, I don't want you to have to shoot me, but tell me how the heck you did this. So he literally got out a napkin and a pen and drew on the napkin. He said, okay, so I get a wave going this direction, and then I get a similar wave going the opposite direction. And when I get them right in phase, it creates a 0 point. It creates a point of stillness. He said it's not empty of energy. It's that the energy is precisely balanced. And what happens when you do that is that point of balance acts like a straw, and it accesses the healing energy of the field. And I think Todd agrees with this, but we haven't been able to prove it yet, that, sometimes when somebody is in stage 4 cancer and they have some deeply spiritual event, or they're in meditation, or they're with some great healer or something like that, and all of a sudden something happens and they go into remission. I think that they're accessing a field, a harmonious aspect of the field in such a way that it affects their sick cells and heals them. And Todd agrees with that. That's one of the reasons why he wanted to do this, because that's the anomaly that shows that it's possible. And he thinks that he found the chord of frequencies that allows us to help ourselves with the technology that can, I mean, we've watched it. I can't make, specific claims, but we've watched it with our friends go in and just heal so many injuries, diseases. I mean, for myself, my vision improved 30%. My strength in the gym improved 33%. It's just uncanny stuff that is going to be, and it's a hint of the future. So that's one of them. And then I'll mention also briefly this Dr. Robert Young. Again, field effects, where he got in trouble because the FDA didn't like that, out of 324 people, over 90% of them were cured of things like cancer, chronic fatigue, that type of stuff. And, that undermines their market in a hurry. So they found false means. They put false charges against him and imprisoned him for quite a while. And then he got out, and then they did it again and fined him $110 million. So they're really trying to stop him. But the bottom line is, he says, I'm not curing people. He said, I have developed protocols and supplements by which people are healing themselves. And it's lifestyle and supplements. And basically what he does is he's discovered that whereas traditional doctors test your blood after it's dead, what he does is he tests the live blood under a microscope in order to see what he calls the interstitium, which is the largest organ in our body is actually the interstitium. And it's the field of liquid that surrounds our arteries and veins and so forth. So it's the field that's affecting our cells. These little toroidal blood cells that are going around keeping you alive all the time. If they stop being toroidal, if they start to collapse, or if they start to bunch together, not only will it plug up your arteries, it'll start causing, liver problems and prostate problems and spleen and gallbladder, your heart problems. All that stuff comes from having the chemistry of the interstitium out of balance. It's usually too acidic because your blood cells will start trying to balance the pH in your blood, and they'll start pulling from your bones, or they'll start pulling from your organs and so forth, because you have to maintain temperature and you have to maintain pH in order to stay alive. And Jung has basically worked on this for 30 years and found the lifestyle secrets and the supplements, particularly certain types of salt minerals and certain types of greens, that if you mind this diet, take these supplements, and also mind how you think, how you treat people, keep your stress in order, then it will turn around virtually everything every disease that we've seen. And it even happened for Kimberly. As she talks about in the film, she was in trouble and she didn't even know it, because she leads a very healthy lifestyle, but she exercises at least once a day. And she never knew about replenishing her salts. So basically, she was starving the salts from her cells. And once he could show her that in her blood, she started in on his protocols, which she's still in 18 months later, she's still doing those protocols, and her blood is pristine now.
Wow, that's a fantastic description.
Do you anticipate, because like you mentioned, I've always said that the oil companies were going to kind of transition into the new energy companies, because they were uniquely positioned with infrastructure and a ton of money and R&D facilities to kind of buy up the competition and eventually, be... I feel like you're less likely to stir up trouble from the oil companies than you are from the pharmaceutical companies in 2020. And I'm wondering if the new dip into health has gotten more pushback.
Yeah, are you saying more pushback from the health or from the
health? Do you find more pushback from the energy sector or from the health sector?
Well, I see it more from the health sector, because there's more breakthroughs going on in health than in energy. And we mentioned briefly in Thrive 2 that in the last 3 years, there have been close to 100 suspicious deaths of holistic doctors. And 77 of them were working specifically on either holistic treatments for cancers or on the autism vaccine connection. And we've actually had our security team do a major investigation behind these. And unfortunately, it's very real. The assassinations, we've tracked them back to far enough to know in general, what's behind this. And it's exactly what you mentioned. The pharmaceuticals have been taking people out in order to try to keep us addicted to their drugs and to depopulate and all the stuff that COVID is furthering right now. So that's still very brutal. And you can see by the censorship right now on the internet of any truth that comes out about autism, about vaccines, any of this stuff. I mean, they're so blatant right now that they won't, literally, these big social media companies won't allow any information out that doesn't come from the WHO or the CDC. So if that isn't blatant confirmation of what I'm talking about, I don't know what is. But in terms of the energy, there's fewer successful energy inventors, and they're getting smarter about not going for patents. That's usually when they get gagged or threatened and get their stuff stolen. So they're going more independent now. But unfortunately, one of the top half dozen devices that I knew of, the inventor was a Ukrainian guy, from Kazakhstan, living in South Korea. It was something called infinity.save. You can look it up on the internet. And they had a beautiful magnetic motor putting out about 10 kilowatts. And they started marketing it for $30,000 about 2 months ago. And when I saw that, I thought, wow, either we've actually crossed over or those guys are going to be in trouble. And a few days later, somebody sent me a thing from the internet where there was a picture of the Minister of Health, the Minister of Science and Technology for South Korea had visited the lab, and there's a picture of him, with his arm around the inventor, and this is going to change energy in South Korea and so forth. Well, a week later, the inventor was sleeping in his lab with the technology to protect it, and the whole thing exploded, and the guy was killed, and the technology was destroyed. And of course, now they're blaming the engineer himself.
The technology.
One of the most sophisticated engineers on the face of the planet somehow must have been charging a battery wrong, and it blew up. So it's obvious what happened there. And so I think that's reminded inventors to be more careful about it. And the good news is that one of the team did survive, and another device of that technology was in a different place, and that is in the process of being secured. But it's still very real. The vested interest in the trillions of dollars vested into health and into energy suppression it's just so vast that it's in one of those unfortunate situations where the powers that be will do anything in their powers to stop the change of the paradigm.
Yeah.
Well, once you have entire nation states, like, it's the backbone of multiple nations. I mean, you got nations that'll go to war over it, probably.
Yeah, well, what I try to remind people of is that, yes, it's nation states, but nation states is not where the action is anymore. Nation states are just kind of an enforcement arm. They're a management tool for the international, call them Illuminati, call them cabal, whatever you want. Those people who are going for the New World Order right now, boundaries make no difference to them. They are multinational, and the real conflict that is emerging right now is not, as I say this in Thrive too, it's not between nation states. It's not between genders or classes or races or ages. The real battle is between those of us who want to be free and those who would continue to try to steal our freedom from us.
So did you guys ever have to look into the cache energy at all, or the cache machines? Did you, is that the right way to say it?
I never met him or personally vetted the device. I did have one of our engineers get one of the device. Actually, there's 3 different engineers I knew who got the device and were testing it. And their conclusion was that it did not do what it said. It does things, but it was not a reliable energy source, at least not.
Yeah, that's what we found. I have a couple friends that were trying it, and it went around for a few years ago. Everybody was all excited about it. It was going around, free, like it was getting shared everywhere, like you would hope for a real free energy device, and it just didn't pan out. None of my friends could get it working, so.
Yeah, one of our engineers went over to the Middle East for a demonstration where Keshe had promised the demonstration of the device. And he got there and he was there for days, it was hype. And then finally it came time for the demonstration and they canceled it. So he, if they had it, I think they would have shown it. So I think my best interpretation is that it's still in process. And unfortunately, they're not careful about the difference between hype and actual results yet.
Yeah, and it's worrisome because that could be a way that the deep state or whoever's controlling this could track all these people that are interested in it. Everybody's signing up for their.
Yeah, and also when someone comes out and makes premature promises and can't follow through, it sort of undermines the rest of the field.
Yeah. So how did you guys handle the whole COVID thing? I mean, it seemed that this happened during the almost, you must have been wrapping it up or close to, or I'm not sure where you were at in your filmmaking, but that must have thrown a bit of a wrench in it. But I know you addressed it well in the film, it was, but I was unsure how much you would have to go into it or how much you addressed it. But in some ways, I think the way you portrayed it, which was good, is that here's what's happening. This is an example of what's happening right now.
So fortunate, guys. It was amazing. We the opening scene of the movie where I'm in the redwoods and the closing scene where Kimberly and I are on the beach, we filmed here in Northern California a week before the shutdown. And those were the last scenes that we needed. And so fortunately we had everything we needed and we could just be editing for all through these months. And we could go back in and get stock footage of COVID type material, and we could redo some of the dialogue to cover it because, people don't pay much attention to anything that isn't COVID related right now. So we were very fortunate to be able to integrate it into what we were saying. And the fact that we didn't have to change anything else just shows how predictive, when you understand the global domination agenda, what they're doing with COVID is not a surprise at all. In fact, in Thrive 1, we have one collage during the global domination agenda chapter where I say, this is what the depopulation agenda looks like today. And it has chemtrails and GMO and so forth, but it also has man-made pandemics, excessive irradiation, and mandatory vaccines. So people are going like, oh, how did you know that? Is this intuition? Did you guess? It's like, no, once you understand what they're doing, this is simply one of the tools that they've been planning to use for a long time.
Yeah, it's out there in the open, really. If you look just under the surface, they're pretty overt about it.
That's right. I'm in the midst of I've been studying it hours a day for the last 7 months, and I'm just about to put out a major paper in a few weeks, and I'll be doing a show on it in what I call my Freedom Portal in next month in November. But I haven't really spoken a lot about it publicly yet. I wanted to make sure I really had all the data and evidence in order. But I've gone deep enough down the rabbit hole now that the thing just makes sense to me. So I'm ready to present it.
That's great. Is that like specifically COVID, you mean, or? Yeah. All right. Well, if we sign up to the newsletter, will we get access to that update?
Yeah, we have got a newsletter that just goes out to our whole network on the email list. And then we have this thing which we just opened last Saturday called the Freedom Portal with Foster Gamble. And that's a subscription. And for $10 a month, you can be part of these essentially weekly shows that are more intimate. Because it's really people that are serious about this stuff and are not just in there to troll or whatever. And so I'll be doing presentations with Q&A. then I'll be doing shows that are just 2 hours of Q&A, where not only do people ask me anything they want, and sometimes Kimberly as well, but I'll be asking the subscription group really provocative questions, like, so to what is your fundamental loyalty? And do you have any excuse for initiating coercion against other people? These questions that I consider critical that most people haven't asked themselves. So that's the second part, is we do a Q&A both ways through the portal. And then finally, like you're doing, I'll be bringing on cutting edge thinkers in all different sectors and having conversations with them about kind of the topic of the month that we're going deep dive into.
That's great. Is there anything that we left out or that you want to, that we might have forgotten? Or Darren, do you have any other questions as well?
No, it's been fun.
No, I just recommend that if this is of interest to people, that you go to thriveon.com. That's our new website, and you can find everything there. We've got not only the Thrive 1 and Thrive 2, we've got our trailer, and we just launched a new teaser just a few days ago that is mostly focused on the energy aspect that makes it's literally a minute and 15 seconds, and you can share it with your network very quickly, that allows people to be immersed in the excitement of what's coming through in a very user-friendly way. And yeah, if this is of interest to you, sign up on the website so you get our newsletter and our public events. And then if you really want to be engaged in the conversation and take action, sign up for the subscription. And then in a few weeks, we'll be launching what we call the Solutions Hub that I mentioned earlier, where we've developed an infrastructure that's proven super effective all over the world in GMOs and glyphosate and energy devices and so forth, for various activist groups to collaborate either locally or virtually by issue and topic.
That's fantastic. I mean, even if it's just fighting your local water, your local city about putting fluoride in the water or whatever, maybe we can share what we've all learned from that type of stuff.
That's exactly the purpose of the whole thing, and it's proven super effective.
That's great. So the other thing I want to mention is, like I said, this is something that people could just sit down with the family and friends, like watch it with everybody. There will be a gift option on here where you can gift it to people as well coming up.
Yeah, we've got it back from our developer crew, and our webmaster has been testing it, and it's solid, but it's got a few little kinks in it that we're working out. And the estimate I got from the team yesterday was that probably in about 3 weeks, and we'll do a whole promotion of that, because it's going to be so many people have been asking, how can I give this to my friends? And so I think I shouldn't even say, because it might not be accurate, but I think it'll be that you can gift as many as you want over the internet to your friends at a 30% discount.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. People have signed up literally for thousands of dollars already, saying, okay, here's my list. Tell me when it's ready. I'm just sending it out to my friends. Because it is a very shareable movie. Our greatest honor is when somebody shares it with their friends, because that means they trust you.
Yeah.
And we really look to make the film, we go into some challenging information, but it's not in panic mode. It's not the sky's falling and, we're hopeless. It's like, no, here's what's happening. Humanity is making significant progress, but we need to keep going. And here's the great news that we see that's coming out. So it actually, believe it or not, it's a lot of families and a lot of communities it's only been out 3 weeks, and a lot of people are gathering their families and communities and schools and so forth and sitting down, because you get educated in a hurry, and then the discussions that come after are really rewarding.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a box set available yet?
Yeah, we do have DVDs that are available. There's discounts if you get 10 or 30 or 100. The DVDs just came through a few days ago, so they are available now on our website.
Fantastic. Well, I really love the film, and we really love to chat with you. It's been great. Been great meeting you finally. And we'll keep an eye on all your stuff, and we'll talk about it on the show for sure. It's something very important. I mean, it really, really resonated with me, pardon the pun.
Thank you.
I can't wait for Thrive 3.
Kimberly and I joke that it's the only topic that's taboo around our house is don't mention three.
You know what? You could call it. You could call it Thrieve. You could call it Thrieve.
That's a bad joke.
Okay, that's good enough. Actually, interesting that you say that. The number of people are starting to show it in old drive-in movies.
Oh, that's great.
And they're calling them thrive-ins now.
I love it.
Perfect.
That's great.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
It's an honor to get to speak with you guys and to share this with your network.
Excellent.
Thanks, Foster. Come back anytime.
Okay. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that was a chat with the one and only Foster Gamble. Thrive, like I said, one of those movies that me and you were watching before we started podcasting. What do you think, buddy?
That was fantastic chat. Yep. It was great. He's so open to all this stuff. Very knowledgeable, too. He lays it all out, even the healing part, lays it all out so I could actually visualize what he's talking about with the V cells and the fluid around your blood and how it extracts from your bones. Like, oh man, it's inspiring.
Yeah, and the movie is super visual too. It helps kind of walk you through a bunch of that stuff. It's like 2.5 hours long. I think the first one's there too. I mean, the first one is probably all over the place by this point, I would say.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's definitely worth watching both of them. And yeah, big thanks to Foster for coming on the show and for making the movie. And big thanks to you guys for listening. If you liked it, you guys got to support the show. Get some value from the show. You got to support the show. It's like you got to buy their movie and stuff like that so that they can keep making more movies and keep doing the great work they're doing. We like to do great work like that too, but we need more supporters first. GoAmerica.ca/support.
Yep.
Spiel.
ThriveOn.com.
Thrive
yeah.
on. Help us thrive on.
Remember that Scott Adams thing? Because. We got to put because in it, right? Because we thrive.
Support the show
Because we need a new chord. What happened to the audio?
I don't know. The chords are breaking down as we speak.
As we speak. They're just fuzzing.
We're like driving over this one with the chairs constantly. I'm sure that's not helping.
We
need a better setup. But, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I had it all set up nice, but we just sort of tore it down quickly.
Yeah. That was inspiring. It was an inspiring movie, inspiring chat. Yeah, I'm inspired.
Yeah, that'd be a little one to put all together is listen to that one and the Adam Apollo one and the Nassim Harriman one, and you could really go down a little rabbit hole there.
Marshall Lefferts too, yeah.
Nice little amalgamation of shows. Anyway, I'm hoping that's just the headphones that are cutting out. Is that just my headphones?
No, it's mine too. So it's more than the headphones if we're both hearing it. It was happening through the show too a little bit.
Yeah, I know. I might have fixed it. We'll see. I think it's from driving over the cord with the chair. GoAmerica.ca/support. We'll probably need a new cord again, and all that other stuff too. Because newsletter. Sign up for the newsletter. We're almost at 1,000 newsletter
subscribe
subscribers.
on iTunes. Yeah.
Subscribe on iTunes. Review the show. Share the show. Tell your friends about this motherfucker. You can get some swag and some masks and some T-shirts. GoAmerica.ca/swag. You can
any donation will get you the black budget feed,
or even just asking nicely.
Ask nicely, but any donation automatically gets you. You don't even have to ask.
It's just like it's like no, you don't have to talk to anyone. No, it just happens. You donate, bang, you're in. There's a bunch of extra shows there. Like I say, you can just ask nicely if you want those too.
There's some audiobooks in there.
Bunch of great audiobooks. You can join the chats, GoAmerica.ca/chats. I mean, if you just go to GoAmerica.ca, there's a little bar of stuff there, and it's got like everything, all the stuff.
It's in the show notes too.
It's in the show notes too. Yeah. You can find the show notes on whatever podcast player you're using. Do all that shit. That'd be fabulous. Then go support, and we would love you forever. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week. I better go finish carving my pumpkin.
All right. Thanks for watching live, everybody.
Thanks for tuning into the live show, guys. We'll see you next Wednesday, I guess. Right? No, tomorrow. Tomorrow,
yeah.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Up is down.
Up is down. Down is up. See you tomorrow.